Nail Talk 23. I'm back with another video. Before we get into the video, YouTube, I need you to hit the like, comment, and subscribe button. Turn on that post notification bell while you at it. Oh, today we got a true crime story. We got the 12 and 13-year-old siblings that killed their stepmom after abuse. Let's get straight into it.
I actually took the fingerprints off the gun and wiped it down. And I told my brother that he got hysterical. He had an emotional breakdown because, once again, this is reality now. This isn't some idea that's in our head anymore. This is reality.
These are Catherine and Curtis Jones. When Catherine was 13 and Curtis was only 12, they became the youngest people to ever be tried and sentenced as adults. In the eyes of the law, they had committed first-degree murder, but no one seemed to look at the absolute horror show their childhood was.
At one point, I was just so happy to be away. You know, and I know that sounds really, really messed up, but there was just some point where I was just away from all that, and I was by myself, and I was safe. While inside dealing with the pain of the sexual abuse that I was experiencing from the age 5 to the date of my incarceration.
When they couldn't take it anymore, the Jones siblings took out all of their rage and frustration on their father's girlfriend. And it would take a long time until people would stop seeing them as the psychopathic predators. This is the full story of Catherine and Curtis Jones, how they became juvenile murderers, and how they escaped a world of pain.
I'm running the new Mac OS Ventura.
I ain't gonna-
What's this?
Before we get started into all this shit, bro.
Should have cleaned it out beforehand.
I ain't never had no stepdad, no stepmom, no step nothing, but I've known people that had steps and whatever, and they've said, not said they want to kill them, but it's just like, if that's not your parents for real, bro, it's like, there's a certain level of respect that's not there, bro. Like, you're not going to respect them people like they the ones who gave birth to you and stuff like that. So I just want to know, like, what did she do to these kids to make them kill her? Because
in 1985 in Florida, Curtis Jones and Stacy Parks had their first baby, Catherine. In May of the following year, Curtis Jr. came along. From the outside, they looked like a young, happy family of 4. But Stacy wasn't happy. Curtis was a vicious physical abuser, and the abuse had started as soon as the pair began dating. When Stacy was pregnant with Catherine, Curtis beat her so badly, her uterus broke, and Catherine had to be born early. Imagine living in a house like that. And you know how abuse usually only gets worse if it's not addressed? Well, it did. And by 1989, Stacy couldn't take it anymore. She left her family and fled to her parents in Kansas. Her 2 kids were just toddlers at that time, but she couldn't take them with her. It broke her heart, but she left, hoping to reunite with them one day. Sadly, this day would never come. Catherine and Curtis Jr. stayed with their dad. All was well. The kids loved Curtis Sr. deeply, and judging by the photos, they seemed to have a great time together. But just a couple of years after Stacy left the family home, Curtis Sr. invited a male relative to live with them. Whether it was to help him financially or to have some company, who knows? But this was the beginning of the end for the Jones children's happiness.
I was the ultimate actress, a professional at being a A+ student, social butterfly, perfect kid on the outside, while inside dealing with the pain of the sexual abuse that I was experiencing from the age 5 to the date of my incarceration.
That's right. The male relative would abuse Catherine sexually constantly since she was kindergarten age, and she wasn't alone.
I didn't know that it was both until it did happen. And when I finally did tell my family, I think it was the second or third time I ran away from home, and HRS got involved. And when they said that they would take us out of the house, I denied it. I said, no, never mind. You know, I don't want to push through with this, even though, you know, in the report, you know, they said there were indicators of abuse. And my brother told me he believed me. And he said, I know it's true because it's happened to me too.
Catherine and Curtis had always been close to each other. In an unstable family environment, they knew that all they had was each other. But after learning both of them were victims of the same monster, they teamed up like never before. They swore that they would get out of that house together and escape the never-ending horror show. In 1994, 96, and 98, Child safety investigators were started for the Jones kids. The first 2 times it was after Curtis complained to his mother about the physical and sexual abuse he was suffering. The 3rd time it was Catherine's account. But none of these times did Curtis Sr. believe his kids. He would defend his relative in front of the child safety officers, and even when they discovered the man's history. The relative had a history of petty crime and pedophilia. Instead, he hadn't moved in with Curtis Sr. due to financial stress. He'd run away from home after violating his girlfriend's 14-year-old daughter. Yeesh. But even with this information, the investigations were dropped every single time. Curtis Sr. would defend his relative, the kids would change their stories, and evidence was always lacking. Why would the children change their stories if the situation was so bad? You see, each case was related to just one of the 2 kids. So if the case was to be finalized, it meant the siblings would be separated. None of them wanted that. Catherine would even refuse her freedom in order to be in prison with her brother. By 1999, there were 3 adults living in the Jones household: Curtis Sr., his monstrous relative, and Curtis Sr.'s girlfriend, 29-year-old Sonia Nicole Spites. She was a teaching assistant with a bright smile, but as far as the kids were concerned, she was a monster too. She saw what was going on in their house, and she didn't lift a finger to stop it. Neither did their father, and this infuriated Catherine and Curtis. Just a few days after the 1998 investigation was closed, Catherine went to the bathroom to take a shower. The relative followed. He pulled the shower curtain and began masturbating. All Catherine could do was crouch down in the corner of the bathroom and cry until he was done. Before he left, he put 50 cents on the toilet seat for Catherine, just when you thought it couldn't get more humiliating for poor Catherine. She wrote in her diary, "I'm going to kill everyone."
Like, how
so
in
Catherine
the fuck
told
is
her
someone
little brother
supposed
about
to
her plan.
feel,
They should
bro?
kill every adult in that house, from the monster who had been terrorizing them for years to the 2 adults who turned a blind eye to it every single day.
I was like a dormant volcano, one that erupted at age 13, resulting in me taking the life of an innocent woman.
Curtis Jr. was happy to go along with the plan. He had enough too. On January 6, 1999, their attack began.
He was in the kitchen and I was sitting at the table. I already knew it was fixing to happen. We had already talked about it. And she was sitting at the other dining room table. And he shot her in the chest. And she tried to grab the phone and I went and took the phone.
Curtis fired the gun several times at Nicole until she wasn't moving anymore. But his sister could see him trembling with fear and shock, so she took the gun and fired the last 2 bullets at the patio. Then she cleaned the gun.
I actually took the fingerprints off the gun and wiped it down. And I told my brother that he got hysterical. He had an emotional breakdown because, once again, this is reality now. This isn't some idea that's in our head anymore. This is reality.
When Curtis was having a full-blown emotional breakdown, the 2 kids called 911 and reported the murder as an accident. Then they fled the house.
I was trying to calm him down, and we ended up leaving the house because of all the blood and stuff that was everywhere. And I called my best friend, and she came and we went to her house, and then we went to another friend's house. And I had told my brother, if anything happens, I did it. You didn't have anything to do with it.
The brotherly love and support here was incredible. Catherine was ready to take the blame for Curtis and go to prison on her own. But when the police caught the kids at 7 a.m. the next morning, Curtis took full responsibility for them both. However, they had no idea that the ordeal was far from over. Catherine and Curtis Jr. were now in prison, but the reality of what they had done was just kicking in.
And, we went in the interview room, and my dad was crying, and I think that's probably the worst part of it, when they told my dad we weren't coming home, that they were charging us both with first-degree premeditated murder.
And the dad, bro,
Different on mine.
you need to be locked up, bro. This shit.
And they were tried as adults too. Their defense team painted the full picture of their childhood. The 3 child abuse investigations, the children's accounts, and even Stacy's heartbreaking account of visiting her kids and seeing them bruised and apathetic. But that didn't do them a lot of good. The prosecution showed them as jealous little monsters who killed Nicole because they wanted Curtis Sr.'s undivided attention. That's
What?
when 13-year-old Catherine was offered a deal.
There was a chance that they were saying that maybe I could go home if I testified earlier than my brother, and I was like, no way, because, I'm the reason that he's in this predicament. And what they wanted me to do is not take responsibility, which would have been a lie.
Catherine protected her brother